right, Mark chapter 13. We are so close to finishing the book of Mark this summer. I hope you've read along the whole way. I hope you've been able to watch these videos. Even if you've just gotten to read a little bit, or maybe you're starting in Mark 13, that's totally fine. But Mark chapter 13 is a very dense chapter of the book of Mark. It's very debated. It's a very contentious book because Jesus is talking about some pretty big things, some pretty scary things. And so I got kind of one of two options. We can keep this short and simple, or I can make this super long and go super deep. We're going to keep this short and simple. I would love to talk through eschatology. I would love to talk through some of the in-depth things of what Jesus means and what Jesus is saying and what it could mean and how people have interpreted it, and a deep dive into all of these things. But seeing as this is just a short devotional encouraging you to read, I want to keep this a little bit shorter. But Jesus is talking about some pretty heavy things here, from the destruction of the temple. And in fact, this was a pretty remarkable prediction. Jesus predicted the temple would be destroyed, which it was in 70 AD, less than half a decade or half a century after he was buried, resurrected, and ascended into heaven. And then he talks about the end of the age. And so there's a lot of argument. Is this the end of the world? Is this the end of the Jewish age? Is this the end of what have you? And again, there's a lot of different opinions and thoughts on that. I would argue it's more of the end of a Jewish age, but again, we're not going to dive deep into that. And then he talks about the abomination of desolation, the coming of the Son of Man, the lesson of the fig tree. And let me say that a lot of times these verses are taken out of context. They're used in ways that aren't really helpful. But these verses are, I think they're talking a lot about what happened in 70 AD with the destruction of the temple. And they also have some dual fulfillment, or they also are talking about the return of Christ. But it can get really confusing and it can get really, really heavy. And so I just want to put it back to what Jesus says at the end of this chapter, verses 32 through 37. Listen to what Jesus says. But concerning that day or that hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard, keep awake, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey when he leaves his home and puts his servants in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to stay awake. Therefore, stay awake. For you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening or at midnight, or when the rooster crows or in the morning, lest he come suddenly and find you asleep. And what I say to you all is this: stay awake. And so let me just say, again, if you want to dive deep into some of those things we discussed about, if maybe the end times, Jesus coming back, Revelation, all of that maybe intimidates you, it scares you, listen to what Jesus is saying. Jesus says, here's this information. Here's what I'm telling you. Stay awake. Stay pursuing me. Stay in my word. Stay with me. Don't freak out about the end times. Don't freak out about the destruction of the temple. Don't freak out about all of these things that you can't control. What you can control is staying awake and waiting and actively pursuing the Lord. Whatever these verses are saying, Jesus is saying that there are going to be things that happen. Temples are going to be destroyed. Wars are going to continue like they always have. There's going to be famine. There's going to be issues. But you, Christian, stay awake and stay focused on Christ. It's not about knowing how to predict the end times. It's not about knowing everything about Jesus' return or what these verses mean. What it means is stay awake and pursue Jesus. That's true for you this school year that's coming up. That's true for you at home. That's true for you when you're alone. That's true for you at church. Stop sleeping in my messages. I'm not going to call you out by name, but you know what I'm saying. Stay awake and pursue the Lord. Don't be lulled to sleep by the enemy. Don't be lulled to sleep by anxiety and depression, by the comforts of this world. Stay awake and pursue Jesus.